The Prophet ﷺ said, when it is a Friday, the angels stand at the gate of the mosque and keep on writing the names of the persons coming to the mosque in succession according to their arrivals. The example of the one who enters the mosque in the earliest hour is that of one offering a camel in sacrifice. The one coming next is like one offering a cow, and then a ram, and then a chicken, and then an egg, respectively. When the Imam comes out for Jummah prayer, they, i.e. the angels, fold their prayer papers and then listen to the khutbah. So the very latest we need to attend for the Jummah prayer is before the khutbah begins. Okay? But the correct etiquette is really to arrive as early as possible, because the reward is greater for the person who arrives early. Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, he who took a bath and then came for Jummah prayer and then prayed that was fixed for him, then kept silence till the Imam finished the sermon and then prayed along with him, his sins between that time and the next Friday would be forgiven, and even for 3 days more. Okay? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will wipe out the sins of a person between one Jummah and the next. And this is one of the benefits of praying the Jummah prayer. And Jummah in itself is a celebration. Just like we have the celebrations of Eid. We have Eid al-Fitr, which marks the end of Ramadan, and we have Eid al-Adha, which is the Eid of the sacrifice, the time when Muslims go for the Hajj. These are the two annual celebrations in Islam, two Eids. The weekly celebration is what? The weekly celebration is the Jummah prayer. So Jummah is the day of celebration during the week. And what is meant by celebration? Okay? In many cultures, celebration is about partying, about having a nice time, involving in a social type of get-together. Okay? But in Islam, the concept of celebration means much more than that. The concept of celebration in Islam has a spiritual context to it. It's not just about having nice food and eating well and meeting people. The spiritual context of the term celebration in Islam means that you have a close relationship with Allah, and you remember that close relationship with Allah, particularly during these times of celebration, whether it be Eids or whether it be Jummah, because these are times when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forgiven the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So the celebration in Islam is a time to remember the favors that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, and particularly this component of forgiveness. Okay, so Eid al-Fitr, for example, is a time when the believing Muslim has spent the whole month of Ramadan engaged in fasting, in reciting the Quran, in doing extra deeds of worship. Eid al-Fitr is a time of celebration, because on that day Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, I have forgiven you. And it's that we are celebrating. Similarly, on the day of Jummah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, this is a day of forgiveness. And for the person who seeks the forgiveness of Allah, he remembers Allah, he goes from Jummah to Jummah, he prays 5 times a day. The period from Jummah to Jummah is a period when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives the person for their minor sins. The 6th hadith here, the Apostle of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he prohibited to sit on hips by erecting feet, sticking them to the stomach, and holding them with hands on Friday while the Imam is delivering the sermon. So what this is saying is, this hadith is telling us of the importance of sitting respectfully when we are listening to the Jummah khutbah. We should sit in a respectful position and in an attentive way listening to the khutbah. Our mind should not be drifting here and there. The Prophet ﷺ said, 3 types of people attend Friday prayer. One is present in a frivolous way, and that is all he gets from it. Another comes with a supplication. Allah may grant or refuse his request as he wishes. Another is present silently and quietly, without stepping over a Muslim or annoying anyone. And that is an atonement for his sins till the next Friday and 3 days more. The reason being that Allah the Exalted says, he who does a good deed will have 10 times as much reward. So again, the importance of observing the correct etiquettes. Okay, we have to be quiet. We have to be very careful not to disturb other people. We have to be very careful not to annoy anybody. And we have to listen attentively to the khutbah. And the final hadith here, the Prophet ﷺ said, Friday is divided into 12 hours. Amongst them, there is an hour in which a Muslim does not ask Allah for anything, but He gives it to him. So seek it in the last hour after the afternoon prayer. So when we think about making dua to Allah, this is the supplication that we make. We raise our hands and we supplicate to Allah and we ask of Him what we need. There are various times when the dua is more likely to be accepted. Okay? For example, the prayer that one makes during the night time, the last third of the night is a very special time to be supplicating to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a time when the dua is more likely to be accepted. When one stands on the plain of Arafah during the days of Hajj, this is a time when the dua is more likely to be accepted. And there are many other times like this. I don't intend to go through all of these times today. Maybe this is something that we can come back to some other time. But there is a time on the day of Jummah, on the day of Friday, when the prayer of the believer is more likely to be accepted. And according to this hadith, this time is after the afternoon prayer. So the exact timing we don't know. In other sources it says that the time might be between the 2 sermons. Is a time when the dua is more likely to be accepted. But the Friday, there is a time when the dua is most likely to be accepted. And we should engage on the Friday in extra remembrance of Allah. We should engage on the Friday in particular to ask of Allah what we need of Him. We should remember the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and those people who are in need. We should pray for them in particular because this is a day and there are times during this day when the dua are more likely to be accepted. Inshallah. So in conclusion, what I want to say is that for men, the Jummah prayer is an obligation, and it's an obligation to be performed in congregation. One thing I did want to mention, I forgot to mention, what does one do if they're not able to make the Jummah prayer in congregation? So for women who are not going to the masjid, if one is sick, one is traveling, what should they do if they are not praying Jummah in congregation? So if somebody is not praying Jummah in congregation, they don't pray 2 rakat Jummah alone. Okay? What they do is they pray 4 rakat Zohar instead. Okay? So the Jummah is a prayer that's only offered in congregation. Okay? If you're not offering the Jummah in prayer for whatever reason, you pray Zohar instead. There is also an etiquette for what one should do if they are late. Okay? So if you are late for the prayer, if the Jummah prayer has already begun and you are just missing the first part of the first rakat, you join the Jummah prayer and you conclude the prayer just like everybody else does with the salam. If you miss the first rakat, so you join the prayer after the Imam has come out of Raku and said Sami Allahu liman hamida, then you miss the first rakat. So after the Imam says Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, you need to stand up and complete the 1 rakat that you have missed. Okay, just like you would do in any other prayer. Okay? So if you miss that first rakat, you just have 1 rakat to pray after everybody else concludes with the salam. Now, according to some schools of fiqh and in the Shafi school of fiqh, if we miss the second rakat, so if the Imam has said Sami Allahu liman hamida in the second rakat and you miss the second rakat, then after the Imam does salam, okay, according to some scholars, you need to pray 4 rakat, just like the rakat of Zohar. So in that situation, we pray 4 rakat. Now that's not universally accepted that in every school of fiqh you pray 4 rakat if you miss both rakats of Jummah. But in the Shafi school, I'm not sure that's universal in the Shafi school, but at least in part of the Shafi school certainly, if you miss 2 rakat, then you although you start your prayer with the intention of Jummah, you pray 4 rakat of Zohar if you miss both rakats. So in the conclusion, I want to just reiterate the Jummah prayer has a very special status in Islam. It is an obligatory prayer for the males. It's voluntary for the females, but the reward of Jummah is very large, and the consequences of missing Jummah are also very consequential. The hadith that mentioned the consequences of missing 3 Jummah prayers in sequence, and that Allah would put a seal on that person's heart, is something that we need to ponder on very carefully and really make it a priority that we have arranged with our employers to take time off and actually attend the Jummah prayer, inshallah. I'll open the floor for any questions.
The Jummah prayer, that goes for the women also?
No, it is not an obligation on women to attend the Jummah prayer. The same, the hadith where we talked about the importance of the 3 consecutive prayers, and if one misses 3 consecutive prayers in a row, that applies to men. This would not apply to women because it's not an obligation for them.
Could you repeat again how the order of, you said, when you arrive to the masjid, you greet the masjid with the 2 rakat, then you do, after azan, you do 4 rakat sunnah, and then you said, after or between the 2 sermons is the 2 rakat.
Okay, so the